Welcome back, guys. Kakati, we can watch a bunch of things that are coming out of Uganda about the election from Ugandan media and all of this and all of that. And whether it's good or bad, biba bigenda sigala Uganda. But then again, when international media goes into the country and picks footage and shows it to the world, well, that's some of the most important news as well because they show it to the world and whatever they show is exactly how the world is going to see us. Kakati kasoke tulabe what DWTV of German. Let's see what exactly they reported about us during this whole electoral quagmire that is going on.
We begin with an emerging pattern in Africa, digital repression around elections. Days before Uganda's presidential vote this week, the government shut down internet nationwide. That has cut the world off in real time from the contest between long-serving President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in power for 40 years, and his main challenger, the pop star Bobi Wine. Human rights groups say the vote has come amid wider repression, with NGOs suspended, opposition voices silenced, and security forces accused of using live fire against civilians. The UN warns that free and fair elections require open access to information. Our correspondent Selo Oneko is in Kampala and sent us this report.
Uganda's elections are once again being seen as a contest between young and old. Staunch supporters of 81-year-old President Yoweri Museveni say that despite his age and 40 years in power, he deserves another 7th term in office.
We see President Museveni is the one who has potential to lead this country because he's the one who has a vision for this country and we support him.
Museveni came to power criticizing African leaders who refused to step down. Now, in a country where the average age is 17, many young Ugandan voters want change. Dressed in bulletproofs for his own safety at his rallies, former musician Robert Chagulani, also known as Bobi Wine, is Museveni's main challenger. His main support base, Uganda's young urban voters. The elections have been marked by widespread repression and intimidation against the opposition, says the United Nations Human Rights Office. Bobi Wine's rallies have been tear-gassed and his supporters beaten and arrested.
Dozens of our comrades are missing now. They've been picked up from the houses and we don't know where they've been taken. We continue to encourage them to be vigilant and look out for each other.
Civil society has also been under pressure. Human rights advocates have been arrested, including 2 activists from neighboring Kenya, who upon their release alleged torture at the hands of the military. Prominent opposition politician Kizza Besigye has also been in jail for a year, facing treason charges.
There's a climate of fear that is being spread by the authorities against anyone who speaks out or any government critic. And we are getting reports from our partners on the ground who have decided to even leave the country during the election period.
Museveni is widely expected to win. He and his inner circle control nearly all aspects of the state. Analysts are concerned about the possible repercussions after the elections.
I'm worried about the future of this country in the sense that we have an old president. He's 82 years of age. We are told he's 82. In fact, for me, I don't even wish him Museveni sudden death, right? I'm praying for his long life. Because at present, he's the only institution holding Uganda together.
Exactly. What Serunkuma is saying is actually true. One of my biggest worries, like I've always said in my videos, is going to be the next coming 10 years in Uganda. Because ogenda kubeera n'abantu ababadde balaba one tunnel vision kati eberenge evuddewo, and now we have multiple visions from different visionaries. Tuberenga abaze ate mu 70s and 80s, somewhere around there. Which is going to be an interesting time because ate tosobola vaayo n'ogamba, just in case Museveni leaves, there won't be any other people who would actually run this country much better than he has. You cannot say that because nobody knows exactly what might happen. Probably people might come to sanity and restore the constitution the way it was drawn in 1996. There are term limits, there are age limits, there is rule of law. there is respect for the arms of government, which is the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, the president's office. So at the end of the day, you cannot come out and say it's all going to be bad. But at the same time, it just might be okay.
There's so many hungry hyenas inside State House on these streets who are waiting for that moment that he collapses.
Most young Ugandans have only known one president in their lifetime, and President Museveni has both the state machinery and the security forces behind him. He also has a lot of support in rural areas. So while there may be fierce fighting at the ballot box, we'll have to wait and see what this means for Uganda's political future.
For more on this election, I'd like to welcome Abdullahi Buru Halaka, researcher and senior advocate for East and Southern Africa at Refugees International. He's an African policy expert with over a decade of experience in security, conflict, and human rights. Abdullahi, reports suggest it's been a repressive campaign, restrictions on rallies and on media coverage, hundreds of opposition supporters arrested. From your vantage point, does the climate leading up to Election Day irreparably compromise the credibility of the vote?
Precisely. And again, it's nothing new for Ugandans, and particularly now increasingly in that part of the world. In Tanzania, just that had an election a few months ago, we saw what really happened. For Uganda, really, the critical thing here is this is Museveni on his 7th term where he has won, and always the elections are preceded by violence, and even after the election, we see violence.
As you just mentioned, we're now looking at a 7th term for Museveni at the age of 81 with no clear successor. What happens after Museveni?
I think it's one of those questions that hangs in the air every single time Ugandans go to the polls. And, a country ideally shouldn't be held hostage by the whims of one individual. That's why you have institutions where you have term limits and age limits, all the things that he's removed from the constitution to allow for him to run. I think it is, again, very, very challenging because Museveni is hell-bent in staying in power. Not just that, or probably even determining who is coming after him. But we've got to be very careful. Uganda, since independence, has not had a single peaceful transfer of power. So any attempt by Museveni could potentially lead Uganda to what it was before 1986.
So paint a clear picture for us. How would you describe the political climate in Uganda today?
I think the political climate in Uganda is very suffocating for anybody who has any contrary idea to what Museveni sees. You can do whatever you want to do as long as you do not challenge the authority of Museveni and people around him. So to the extent that this has become an incredibly personalized, if not repressive state, it doesn't bode well for a country where the president in September will turn 82 and 73% of that country's population were not born when he was the president. It has one of the youngest population of a median age of 17. While Museveni is always looking back saying, we want to preserve what we've earned, for many that sounds like history when majority of them are interested in their future.
How about East Africa as a whole? We just spoke about Uganda, of course. In Kenya and Tanzania, we've seen elections marked by violent crackdowns on protesters. Then there's Rwanda and Burundi and their long-term authoritarian regimes. Are human rights and the civil space in general under a clear threat?
Indeed. I think there is no doubt about that. I think what we are seeing is just not around election, but election is a very good thermostat for that. I think the language of human rights, the language of good governance, the language of separation of powers between various arms of government and civil rights, freedom of movement, right to protest and all that is under tremendous threat. I think the three East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, whereas they do fairly well than others, That is partly because the standard is so low and it is a tyranny of low expectations that we are dealing with, and it doesn't bode well moving forward.
A tyranny of low expectations. You're writing a dire narrative. Are we at the point in Africa where the norm is this? An election happens on time as promised, but a real transfer of power, genuine choice by citizens, is the exception rather than the rule?
Absolutely. Elections by design, the processes that leads to an elections are very clear, but the outcome shouldn't be clear because that can only be determined at the end of that process. But what we have right now is an outcome that is almost pre-cooked. We know that is what is going on in many of these countries. If in the western part of the continent we have the coup belts, mostly men in military fatigues, are taking over the instrument of power. On the other part, on the eastern part of the continent, what you have is we have an election as a ritual to reinforce a predetermined outcomes.
Many thanks to Abdullahi Bawu Halaka with Refugees International.
You know, for me, I have one question. How does this reflect our country onto the international community? Do people want to work with us when they see such kind of stuff happening? And I've also heard that today is the 16th, right? And I've also heard that at least 9 people have died and they've been killed by the army. I cannot confirm that. I am not saying that that's what's happened, but it's been going on social media and stuff like that. We shall wait for Uganda police to confirm that. But yeah, how does the international community see our country? I understand probably this is going to ride for a couple of months and then maybe later, even to be normalcy and back to what we've been in. But at the end of the day, how much does this affect our country in regards to the international relations? Those are some of the questions that probably stand to be answered. And I won't take this any further. Thank you for watching. What do you think? Put your comments down below and see you in the next one.